Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Judith Szabo, and I am the head of sales for Veco Travel Hungary. Welcome on the 8th webinar of our session. Today I will be your host, and our guest is Mr. David Ratnam from the International Air Transport Association, IATA. Hello, David. Thank you for accepting our invitation and joining us today.
Thank you, Judith. My pleasure.
David is responsible for managing the implementation of digital retailing in Europe, Middle East, Africa, and the CIS countries, as well as airline implementations of IATA Travel Pass in Europe. He has over 37 years of experience in the aviation industry and has been with IATA for more than 15 years, previously working on the successful implementations of 100% electronic ticketing and barcoded boarding passes. Prior to IATA, David worked for several airlines, including British Airways, Qantas, Air New Zealand, and United, mainly in the IT field. And today, our topic is the IATA Travel Pass and the impact of COVID-19 for the aviation industry. I would like to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, that if you have any question during our session, you can put it in the Q&A section, which you can see at the bottom of your screen in the middle. So let's jump into the middle. COVID-19 is having a huge impact on aviation as well, beside many other industries. The industry has suffered a total loss of more than $100 billion in 2020, and the demand was down by 65% versus 2019. What are the forecasts for 2021? Can we expect a significant recovery this year?
I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately no. We're expecting airlines to make losses of over 47 billion for the year 2021, and actually revenue kilometers will be, we expect 43% of the levels they were in 2019. We are seeing some recovery, but not enough.
Yes, unfortunately, airlines have found themselves in a very difficult situation, and many routes have been taken off the map, perhaps forever. How is the general situation for airlines now? Do you have any insight on how they plan to rebuild their capacity?
Well, what we saw last year, for example, was that domestic travel was really the first to recover. We're seeing recovery more in leisure travel, which makes sense because people have to travel to see relatives, to be reunited with family, and business travel it will be slower to recover. We're seeing airlines that are opening routes bilaterally. So you're seeing countries that are maybe starting routes, you see Israel to Cyprus, Israel to Greece. And so what we're seeing are kind of bilateral openings, but nothing very broad.
Yes, that's absolutely understandable. And we can see that there are many different regulations how each country allows travelers to enter. One type is that they accept those vaccinated passengers only who's got a World Health Organization authorized vaccination. Do you, as IATA, consult with the World Health Organization on how to restart the industry, and do they have any recommendations for you?
We do consult with them. Firstly, I want to make it clear that from IATA's position, we're not saying or suggesting that people must be vaccinated to travel. That's down to personal decision and also to governmental decisions. But with regard to the World Health Organization, we do consult with them, and we are tracking their recommendations, and we are recommending that governments issue vaccination certificates based on World Health Organization smart vaccine certificate data standards, particularly including QR codes.
Yeah, I understand. And Meanwhile, also all the countries want to restart their economy and the free movement. And also in the EU, it is clear that swift alignment by all three EU institutions, the Parliament, the Council, and the European Commission, critical in restoring free movement for EU citizens by summer. And they want to build it on three pillars. One is the unified name of the digital green certificate. And I would like to know what is your point of view, I mean, IATA's point of view about it. How can your application, the IATA Travel Pass, fit in this process? Can you please share us some thoughts on it and show us what IATA Travel Pass can help?
Sure, Judith. So we have produced a positional paper, which you'd be welcome to share with the attendees. Our position is this: when I do the demonstration, I'll show you how we're working. It's based on reading a QR code on a vaccination certificate. And where possible, we would like to use the keys in the QR code in order to verify the vaccination certificate with authorities. Now, that seems in line with what the EU Green Digital Certificate is going to look like. What we're still trying to clarify is whether non-governmental bodies can access the key and verify it. So that's important. So we would need that in order to authenticate that the certificate is genuine.
That's clear. Thank you very much. So how is your application, the IATA Travel Pass, looks like? Can you please share us your presentation and demo about it?
I will. So if you can give me a moment, I will share my screen and do a presentation. I'm expecting it will take about 20 minutes, if that's okay, Judith, and then
yes,
we can go back to questions. Okay, so if you just bear with me one moment, I will bring that up. And just please let me know when you can see it.
I can see it. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. So I'll go ahead then. So what is the issue that we're seeing? So what we're seeing is that governments are concerned about importing COVID-19 into their countries. So we're seeing that they're imposing quarantines and they're changing the regulations quite often. And it's very difficult for passengers and airlines to keep track of the various requirements as they change. And IATA Travel Pass is looking to address that. So we're aiming to give airlines and governments the confidence, not just in what is required by them, but also being able to link the passengers' test results or vaccination certificate to their identity, so governments can have confidence that any test results or vaccination certificates presented to them belong to the person who's presenting them and they're genuine. And for passengers, one of the challenges is not knowing what they need to do, and so they would like to be able to know that they've met the requirements for wherever they're traveling to before they set off from their homes, rather than go to an airport and be concerned that as they try and board the flight, they find out their test has expired, or even worse, when they arrive at their destination, they go up to the border authority and they're denied entry into the country. So with that in mind, what are the concerns? So from a passenger perspective, they want to be able to know what they need to do, when they need to do it, where to go if it's for a test, to whom they have to present the test results, and when they need to produce those results. For governments, they want to be able to ensure that the test results or vaccination certificates are not fraudulent, that they're genuine, and they belong to the person presenting them. Airlines have a dual challenge. not only do they need to notify their travelers that what they need to do, but they also need to check to make sure that they've met the requirements of the border authority before they can board them onto the flight. And for laboratories and even for authorities that are issuing vaccination certificates, they need to be confident that any test results or certificates will meet the requirements of other governments. So with that in mind, we've built IATA Travel Pass as a modular solution. We've built it as 4 modules that serve 3 functions, and they're interoperable and open access. So what does that mean? It means that you can combine one or more of the modules in IATA Travel Pass with any other health provider's solution. So when I describe them, we have a contactless, you could use another health wallet. And that's important because we do not see one solution dominating. There will be a number of solutions out there. And the important thing is that they work together. And we've built them on international standards, open access standards, so that they will comply and they will have that interoperability with others that are implemented to those standards as well. So I mentioned there are 4 modules and they serve 3 functions. And the first one is a contactless app. And that gives the traveler the ability to create a digital version of their passport. And this is something we were working on before COVID-19. We had a problem, particularly in Europe, where many airports are reaching full capacity. They're reaching their limits. And one of the pressure points on passenger flow is having to produce a physical document for your identity. And so we were looking at on a One ID initiative to be able to provide that information digitally so passengers could share biometric information in advance and advance through the airports without having to stop at a desk and hand over their passport. Now with COVID-19, we have a different problem. We've got airlines that are operating at a fraction of their normal operation, sometimes less than 10% of what they were flying in 2019. But they require 100% of the staff at the airport in order to do the checks, checking documents, checking requirements. So this is aimed to alleviate that. And of course, another thing is if you can provide your digital identity, you don't have to physically hand documents and risk catching COVID-19. So there's 2 benefits there. The second function that the Travel Pass is helping with is identifying what travelers need to do. And this is in a rules-based database called Timatic. I'm sure you and many people have heard of Timatic. It's a solution that's been available for over 60 years to enable people to check their passport, visa, health requirements. It's been enhanced to include specific COVID-19 requirements. And to give you an idea of how much effort we've had to put into this, before the pandemic, we were updating the Timatic database roughly 60, 70 times a day on a heavy day from changes of government regulations. With the COVID-19, we're updating this database over 200 times a day. So it's almost tripled in the number of updates. And this will give passengers information on what they need to do, and we will also check what they've done. The third function is served by 2 of the modules, and this is a lab solution. And the first module is a registry of laboratories where you can undertake COVID tests. And the second module is a lab app, and this enables the laboratory to securely communicate test results to the traveler, and then enabling the traveler to communicate those test results digitally to airline or to border authority. So how does it work? So in this case, the traveler has downloaded the IATA Travel Pass app. They could, of course, use an airline's app and have all of this functionality integrated into the airline. And we're discussing this with the airlines. So after downloading their app, they create their digital identity, and I'll show this in a video. And then they import their itinerary into the app from the airline. So now in the app, we have the passenger's digital ID and their itinerary. Then we do that thematic check. We check what are the requirements for where they're traveling to. And once that's been advised to the traveler, they can then use and look in the laboratory registry to determine where there is a laboratory where they can get tested. And then they can, then they would make their appointment at the laboratory outside of the app. They would go to the laboratory, and then the laboratory would generate a QR code for them. And that is called, I'll just check here, the QR code only has information regarding or just has a link. There's no personal information. And all this does is it establishes a peer-to-peer link from laboratory to traveler's device. And then when the results are ready, they can be communicated to the device. And I'll show this in the demo. Similarly, if they've been vaccinated, they can scan the QR code on their vaccination certificate. That could be a piece of paper, or it could be from a screen on a desktop. And then at this point, once they've done either of those two processes, on the phone, you will have the digital ID, the itinerary, and now you'll have the test results or vaccination certificate. So then we do the check. Have you met the requirements of the destination authority? So let's say the traveler is flying Budapest to Madrid. You check, okay, for Spain, you need a PCR test. You need to do it within 72 hours or whatever. It checks the information. If you've met those requirements, you get an okay to travel. And if you don't, you get a not okay to travel. And then the traveler is prompted to share that information with airline, with border authorities, or with an airport. And that can be done in two ways: on a screen display, which they can show, or preferably digitally, that information can be securely communicated to border authority or airline using verifiable credentials. And these are based on existing standards, W3C for encryption and secure communication of data. So that's roughly how it works. I'll now show it in action on a video. And I'm just checking the time, make sure. So, let me pause again. So here we have a traveler, Louise, who's traveling Budapest to Madrid. And she's downloaded the app. This could, of course, be the airline own app. So the first thing she does is take a selfie. And that selfie is checked to make sure it's as close to a passport photo. So background, lighting, any covering on the face. And if that's okay, then Louise will make a video, a short liveness test to ensure she's not taking a photo of a photo. That is compared with that selfie photograph. And if that is okay, then Louise will scan her passport. So firstly, she will read or she will scan the machine readable part of the passport. And then she will read the biometric chip from the passport that will capture passport information and the biometrics from the chip. That's compared with the selfie. And then if everything is okay, then the digital passport is created. And Louise is advised of that. So now Louise has her oops, let me just pause here. Louise has her digital ID, her itinerary is imported. She checks what her requirements are. She sees there's a laboratory close to her that can be done with geolocation. She makes her appointment, and now we're at the laboratory, and the laboratory is going to register Louise as a new customer. We're providing the laboratories with a portal to do this. They generate that QR code, and Louise proves who she is by showing her a version of the digital passport so that they know that this is her device. They take her swab or her sample, they assign an ID to that, and they enter that information into the portal. Now, we are providing the labs with a set of APIs so that they can connect directly into the app, but for most labs, they'll use the portal. And when she does her test, the test is analyzed. Now the test results are ready. Her sample is retrieved on the system, and that information then, there's a drop-down menu. It will have the most frequently entered data from the laboratory, and then the laboratory will populate the information, and then that will get communicated to Louise. Louise is getting a notification now on the app that her results are ready, as you can see, and now she can import those test results. And here she's whoops, let me pause again. I'll go back a sec. She's imported the test results, and now we do the check to see, has she met the requirements? If she does, you can see she gets that green tick with that information. And then she's prompted if she wants to share that information with the airline or the airport. And you can see more details on the on the test information itself. So that's simply how the how it works for the for the test results. With the vaccination certificate, we've run a proof of concept, and that is completed. Now we're looking to make this available on the app around about the end of May. And as I mentioned, that involves scanning the QR code, capturing that information and the QR code itself into the app. And then you can see in gray vaccine data authentication. So what we would want to do is take the keys from the QR code and use that to verify that the certificate is genuine. So we would first, of course, once having scanned, check the name and date of birth to make sure it belongs to the person presenting it. And showing this in a demo now, I'll quickly show it. It's a very simple process. The proof of concept, we used a Chinese vaccination certificate and Qatari. So I believe this is the Chinese one. You can see just scanning the code, and it's successfully entered into the Travel Pass app. And you can see you've got all of the information regarding the vaccination itself and the QR code, as I mentioned. And of course, the next step will be to authenticate that, especially when the green digital certificate is available. Hopefully we can do that with the EU. And this is the other one. This is the Qatari one. Again, it's exactly the same process. And here you can see in the app itself, the wallet, the vaccination certificates. So that's essentially that, keeping an eye on time. And there you have it. So let's move on. So I'll go back. One thing to point out, all the travelers' personal data is held on their phone, on their device. There is no external database holding any personal information. So it's fully compliant with GDPR. It's fully compliant with other data privacy laws as well, such as HIPAA in the States. Another thing to point out is we cannot use it at the moment as it is for French or German passport holders because the law, their laws don't allow for the passport chip to be read by non-governments. So we are working on a solution for them, as well as the 50-odd countries that don't have chipped passports. We're using OCR scanning in order to capture the passport information so that those passport holders can use the app. So I described it as a modular interoperable solution. So you could take one or more of those different modules and work with another provider. So you could use the contactless with a different health wallet provider. You could build in the thematic checks into another solution as well. So it does enable it to be used with a wide variety of solutions. I mentioned it's based on standards. So it's based on ICAO Digital Travel Credential for that digital ID creation. We're using W3C digital comm standards to ensure that the laboratory test results or vaccination certificate are securely communicated from the laboratory to the traveler's device, and then when it's transferred from the traveler to the airline or border authority, that those it's securely communicated, and therefore governments can be confident that any test results or vaccination certificates presented to them have not been tampered with. And it's also based on the One ID initiative around the usage of biometrics. IATA, why IATA? We're a trusted industry body. We're aiming for Travel Pass as a collective solution. So our primary goal is to get airlines flying and to get travelers in the air as well. So we're building it at cost. The cost will be as close to cost as possible. It's a transactional charge that we apply to airlines. So we're not charging travelers, border authorities or laboratories to use it. So it will be airlines, and it's a low cents per transaction. We're building it as a sustainable solution. So I mentioned about the digital ID. That's something that we were looking at for pre-COVID, and it's something that we think will be useful in the future when air travel recovers back to 2019 levels. We're looking to incorporate other forms of identity, such as ID cards and driving licenses for domestic travel and Schengen travel. There's other potential uses that we're considering. So other kinds of health certification, it could be yellow fever or meningitis. We could use it to process electronic visas in the future. And also it could give the airlines the opportunity to push things like vouchers or lounge access to any travelers who've been disrupted. So the potential uses go beyond the pandemic. We're providing software to airlines, to border authorities, to enable them to incorporate into their systems so that they can receive that verifiable credential, that secure information, and put it directly into their system. So we're working with, from an airline perspective, the big providers, system providers like Amadeus and Sabre we're talking to. And airlines have options on how to input the PNR information or the itinerary. Could be direct integration, or they could use existing solutions at airports such as Collins SITA that is already in a number of airports around biometric usage for things like bag drop. Keeping an eye on time, 5 minutes I'll give myself. So we've set up a user group to prioritize the future developments of the app. So they will determine what gets priority. And that could be things like multiple languages in the app. It could be things like having multiple people on one device. It could be more about itinerary checks. So there's lots and lots of development in the pipeline, and they are going to decide what is the priority for that. And with regard to the roadmap, we released the app on the 19th of April in the Apple Store. It went live yesterday in Android Store, albeit with 1 or 2 bugs. And I'm told that that's due to the fact that there are many more devices that use Android. And of course, with Apple, you're only using one provider. So those are being corrected, but it is usable. We will have a release in of the software kit for airlines to build it into their own apps. That's ready, and that should be available in about a week or so. And I mentioned that proof of concept on the vaccination certificate. We're aiming to have that available towards the end of May. And of course, we will have the non-chipped passport usage as well. That should be available in June, mid-June and beyond. So there's plenty in the roadmap for it. We have a number of airlines that are trialing and using the app. Last check I made, there were 56 airlines. These are the ones who've publicly announced that they're in the using the app. Actually, this is slightly out of date. We've got more airlines in there, and the trialing is roughly taking a few weeks. They're using the app. We're seeing them use the app on live routes. So the first passenger using the app was on a Singapore to London flight, and also on Qatari flights. Within our region, we've got a lot of airlines. We have about 20 airlines trialing. And to give you some examples of who's doing what, we have Virgin Atlantic, who are trialing from London to Barbados. We have Iberia, who are trialing from Madrid to Montevideo and Panama. We have Vueling, who are using it on Barcelona to Zurich. We have Air Baltic, who are trialing from Riga to Oslo, and Air Serbia from Zagreb to Zurich. And there are many more as well. Some of them are not public at this moment. And with that, hopefully I haven't gone too long. I think we should have some time for questions and answers. Yes, so I will stop sharing and hand back to you, Judith.
Thank you, David. It was really interesting and very detailed introduction. We have received 2 questions from our audience. One is, will your platform be able to adapt if these stage 3 trials do not become approved for market use in 2023?
I'm sorry, what stage 3 trials of?
Do not become approved for market use in 2023.
I don't understand. Approved by whom and what stage?
I don't know, maybe we received this question in the Q&A section from Mr. Henry Mickelberg. Can you please specify what do you think of Mr. Mickelberg?
What I can say is we are looking to get approval from a number of authorities, and we have already got some governments saying that they will accept IATA travel pass. We've got Singapore, for example, and Panama are both accepting the okay to travel from the past. We've got 3 countries in Europe, but they haven't been publicly announced, so I can't name them. And obviously, we would want to get approval with all of the various bodies, EU, national governments, in order to use it. But even where governments don't accept it, it is still useful because the traveler can get their information, find out what they need to do, and importantly, the airline can check to make sure they've met the requirements. Airlines are getting fined where they carry travelers who haven't met the requirements. And recently I saw an article that there were 630 fines on airlines in the UK from February the 11th to April the 27th, and that cost 1.3 billion. So for that alone, it's worth the airlines doing. But of course, if we get the governments to accept, that's even better.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I hope it was an answer for you, Mr. Mickelberg, but if not, please just write us another question regarding it. We received another one. Mr. Ratnam, thank you. It was great. We understand and looking forward, but allow me a question. How about non-IATA air carriers? Will they benefit this system or they have to create an additional system?
So we're making the app available to any carrier, IATA and non-IATA, and we have some non-IATA carriers who are involved in the trials. So we're not discriminating in that way. And yeah, we're more than happy to have it. Our goal is to get airlines traveling, and that includes our non-members as well.
Okay, and one more, do passengers need to register in the app?
They don't need to do anything. Remember, all of their data is on their phone, owned by them, and only available to them. So they don't need to register in any external database. At the moment, the app is locked, so you can download the app, but you can't unlock it without a code. And the reason for that is because of the trials. We don't want, the trials are on selected routes. So let's say an airline, I mentioned Air Baltic from Riga to Oslo, they don't want travelers on Riga to Frankfurt or whatever asking to use the app. So it is locked, so that only specific, but it will become unlocked in a few weeks, and anyone can download it and create their digital ID, and there's no registration needed. Of course, to use it, you need the airline to have adopted it. So it's pointless downloading the app if there's no airline that is using it. You'll just have digital ID on it.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, Mr. Mickelberg clarified the question. Naturally, all of the vaccines are in stage 3 trials. As only one in 5,000 drugs make it to the market, it's unlikely that all the potential vaccines will be approved when the trials end, earliest 2023.
Okay, so this revolves around government requirements. So what we do in the thematic database, that will have what are the arrival requirements for all of the airports worldwide. So if let's say the Hungarian authorities say, we'll accept this vaccine, but we won't accept that one, that's going to be built into that rules database, so that when the traveler uploads a vaccination certificate, it will check, is this, Pfizer, Moderna, whoever, okay, this one's acceptable. If it's somebody else, it's not. So that check will be done in advance, and those requirements will be met.
Thank you very much. Here is another one. Do you know, I'm not sure if you know, but maybe you have more information than us. Do you know when US will lift the travel ban?
To be honest, no. So again, we're at the mercy, as everyone else is, of the government requirements. Hopefully we will see. We're hopeful that we will see some lifting of restrictions. We are beginning to see that, and I think all of this is going to depend on the speed of vaccinations in a number of countries. If I'm not mistaken, the US still requires you to have a test even if you've been vaccinated, so that may well continue into the future, but I expect we'll see gradual opening up of countries as their populations get vaccinated and as the disease goes down, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. And here is another one. Could the program crash due to the large numbers of passengers that will use it? And what will be the backup system? Should we have the paper documents also, just in case?
That's a very good point. So I'll take the second point first. Yes, you should have your paper as backup, because even if the system doesn't crash, you could lose your phone, you could break your phone, your battery could die. And it's always recommended to have your physical passport and either a paper copy of your test results or vaccination certificate, or another device on which you've got them captured. So yes, on the backup, because of those reasons. And as for the system crashing, I hope not. I guess that's one of the things we'll find out. As I mentioned, we've got over 56 trials. We've got people using them. So we've had a lot of downloads of the app. So I'll give you an example. In Germany, where they can't use the app because German passport holders aren't allowed to create the digital passport, they've downloaded over 9,000 times last week. So there is a lot, but and bear in mind that I don't expect everyone will be doing their checks at the same time. So performance is something that we will keep a track of, and obviously as usage goes up, it's important that it can be used quickly and doesn't crash.
Okay, great. Do you plan to have cooperation with corporate companies?
At the moment, we're aiming at airlines and governments only. It is in the thoughts. I won't say in the roadmap because we haven't got any dates for making the app available for use outside of airlines. And I've had a lot of inquiries from corporates, from travel management companies, from cruise liners, from events organizers, and I think there is potential there. And us of us who are working on it are constantly asking, when are you going to start making this available? Because I think certainly for the being able to show your test results or vaccination certificate or even your digital ID has uses beyond just airlines.
Okay, thank you very much. Regarding the app itself, do passengers need to pay for IATA Travel Pass, or it's a free downloaded application?
Oops. It's free to download, so that there's no charge for travelers. The charging is solely on airlines to do that. Now, how the airlines present that to their customers is really down to their business. Some airlines may charge the customers to use it, and you would see that maybe with some low-cost carriers that might do that, and then the sort of IATA carriers maybe will probably build it into their pricing, so they won't directly charge customers. But there's no charge from IATA to use the app.
Here's another one. Governments are changing entry restrictions from time to time due to COVID. How quickly Thematic is updated after a new restriction has been implemented? In other words, how reliable is Thematic?
Well, we upload it immediately. We get notification from a government or health authority of any changes in requirements. So we make those updates immediately. It's important that they're there immediately. And we've got a team working on that. And to give you another example, my colleague who works there told me that there were a couple of Mondays ago, 38 different government changes, different country changes that one day. So we have to put those in place immediately.
Yes, that's really a huge data and a lot of work behind the scenes, let's say. I know it sounds maybe weird, but there are still many people who do not have smartphones or are afraid of using, different applications besides just calling and texting somebody. So is there or will be a desktop version of the application where they can put all the data and print out that digital certification, let's say, which contains the QR code itself? So let's say it's a hybrid solution.
Yeah, so I mean, if they're printing it out, then they may as well take the vaccination certificate or the test results they were given directly. And at this point, no, we're not looking at a desktop version, simply because the test results, the vaccination certificate are tightly bound to the traveler's identity, and when you have it on a desktop, it's harder to control that. But we do recognize that not everyone will be able to use the app for just the reasons you mentioned. Some people don't have a phone that has NFC reader, for example, and then there are travelers who are not comfortable using it. We're not seeing this as 100% solution for everyone. What we're thinking of is if we can get 60%, 80% of a flight travelers using it, then it frees the staff to focus on those few people who can't use it. And this is similar to what you see on those e-gates that you see in Frankfurt and Munich and other airports, as well as the e-borders. Not everyone can use an e-border, but if you can get a good flow through there, then you have the more staff to deal with the people who have to do a physical check.
Yes, thank you. And one more thing regarding the tests, because you also mentioned during your presentation that Global Registry of Approved Labs and Centers for Testing and Vaccination verified by IATA provides passenger the details of labs locations and test types available. So does that mean that not all the test locations will be accredited, let's say, or that you will verify each and every test center all across the world, or how should it work?
Okay, so we're an airline association. We're not in the health business, so we don't have the capability to check them. So we're depending on trust, and we're depending on verified labs, and our sources for getting labs into the database are from government lists of approved labs. So in the UK, for example, we worked with their list of approved labs. The airlines themselves, if they have approved laboratories that they worked with, we will look to onboard them. And then networks of lab providers. So we've onboarded Eurofins and Unilabs, which are two big networks of laboratory providers. And we will onboard, and we will check with any other laboratories that they have national certification, that they have accreditation from government and health authorities before we onboard them. What we won't do is onboard somebody who may be in some small village somewhere and they don't have any credential. We won't do that. So we're looking at those three as the sources for the laboratory information.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question from our audience. How are kids' data uploaded in the app, assuming they don't have a smartphone?
Okay, so for the first release of the app, dependents can't use the app because for that very reason. But what we are doing is, and that's being prioritized by the user group in the roadmap, is to have multiple people on one device. So it will give the ability for a family to capture everyone's information and use one phone for more than one person. And that's in a future roadmap.
That's great, thank you. And let's pick a last one, not to make it too long for everybody. As seamless travel is not possible amid the chaotic immigration rules of the government, do you expect EU to rethink the passenger right rules relative to the refund for denied boarding? Time to time, boarding is banned because of the lab procedure and so on.
I'm not quite sure on the question, but so passengers deny, this is the whole thing that we're looking to overcome with the app, is that you won't be denied boarding because you will have that okay to travel. So remember, the airline is using the app, has asked you to use the app. You've gone, you've done your test or uploaded your vaccine certificate, and that has been checked against the requirements for the government. So there should be no denial of boarding as a result. If you don't meet the requirements, you won't get that okay to travel. So if you have a positive test for COVID, or your test has expired, then you won't be accepted. But you will be aware of that because you'll have that not okay to travel.
Thank you. And a really last question from my side.
I'm fine.
That we saw from your presentation that the current use of the app by the airlines and the future use by the airlines. So it means that governments and airlines both should accept and use the app in order to make it work. or how it should be in the future to really get the full benefit?
To get the full benefit, I think you've exactly said the right words there. To get the full benefit, we want governments, we want airlines, and we want that use outside. You can imagine if you could go to an airport, you've shared your biometric information with the with security, you've shared it with the airline, you've shared it with the border authority. You don't have to get anything out of your pocket to show anyone, because they can use your biometrics that you've agreed to share with them, and then you've got a completely touchless travel experience if that's what you wish to have. So yes, we need everyone to adopt it to get to see those full benefits.
Thank you. And how likely is it that change in rules may happen between loading the data into the app and the time of departure? Is there any time limit required to load the data for verification in the app?
So there will be an ability in the future to do a recheck. So if you've done a check and then you want to recheck, you can do that. Now, if the question is, what if you've done the check, you've got to the airport, you've boarded the flight, and then the rules changed? I don't think anyone can cover that. But usually, and one would hope that governments are not going to impose an immediate restriction. They usually allow a day or so for people to adjust, and I hope it would never be a situation where you're actually in the air and the rules change, you land, and then you find it. But the important thing is if you can do that check before you depart, then you can have confidence that you've got the right information. You go to the airport, you've checked in, you've been accepted, and hopefully there won't be a change that's going to occur that quickly.
Okay. David, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing us all this information and really answering all the questions coming from us and from our audience. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope that this webinar was very useful for you as well. And if you would like to receive any news from us for future webinars and for the latest updates in the travel and events industry, you can subscribe to our newsletter as well as to our application WECO with You, which you can download to your mobile phone. And after we finish the webinar, you will receive a small questionnaire. How did you like the topic? And if you have any idea what you would like to hear in the future from us, you can share with us as well. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon for everybody.